Intro music is difficult, okay. Welcome back to episode 4 of the Voice of Skylar Morgan podcast. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Voice of Skylar Morgan podcast. I'm Skylar Morgan, and I thought I would take a brief moment today to let you get to know me a little bit and why, I kind of touched on it before, a little bit I suppose, but what made me specifically get into audiobook narration. I wasn't necessarily an avid reader, I suppose you could say, growing up. I did the minimum, and I played sports, but I read the classics, I suppose, that they make you read in high school. Tried to read Lord of the Rings, side note, in about 8th grade. No, it was 7th grade, tried to read Lord of the Rings, and it was so far above my reading level, I thought my head was going to explode. And then halfway through book 1, I finally learned what alas means. Yeah, I was just making it up for the first half. In case you're wondering, school's back in session, and now it sounds like there's a race car track outside my place. Fuck me, man. And then eventually, we would travel from Montana down to Alabama to see some family. And on that road trip, it's like a 3-day drive. When I was, just a wee tech, I would read the Harry Potter books. And it started easy because, the books were small, and then by the end, in 6 days total, I was trying to read a book this thick. And that's what kind of got me into science fiction. It didn't necessarily get me into science fiction reading at the time, but it did let me know that feeling of when you can get swept away into an entire new world, and then it's almost like your head was underwater for a little bit, then you're like, holy shit, oh yeah, reality. That's a certain kind of magic that I thought was pretty cool. But of course, and this is my excuse for not reading, I played sports. Cool, huh? Here's the deal. It gave me good life experience, but I think I missed out on a lot of books. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is I wasn't super into reading all the time. Until I started commuting. I was living in Austin at the time, and I was commuting to work. It was 2 hours to work and 2.5 hours from work. It's in Austin, Texas. It's now getting to the point where everybody keeps moving there, I hear. But I left there, and boy, I don't want to go back. Traffic, man. It's a thing. And so I'd be there for about 2.5 hours, 2 hours. Listening to the radio, you can only listen to your favorite CD so many times before you're like, this is now my least favorite CD. So I started listening to audiobooks. I joined Audible, got 1 book a month, and bought a couple other ones, and I stumbled across books like Fuzzy Nation from John Scalzi. He took an old book from 1962 or something from Beam Pipers, I believe. Wrote a book, and it was kind of true to the times, and I guess it was a little too spicy. And I didn't read it, but what I heard it in a racial way, just in the way it was written, I suppose. It was written in the times. And so John Scalzi sees this and goes, man, there's something to this book. The storyline's great. I'm going to rewrite it. So he does. He rewrites it, and he doesn't tell the publishing company about it or anything. He just presents it to him one day. He's like, hey, by the way, I took this book. I did this. What do you think? Big risk. A lot of time. I mean, he rewrote a story. Turns out they're like, hey, this is pretty good. Go for it. And so they release it, and Will Wheaton narrates it. And he does a fucking good job. I mean, there's no other way to say it. But I'd listen to that book on the way to work in those 2 hours and find that when I got to the end of my commute, I wanted to sit there for another 10 minutes and listen to this story be told. Now, I don't know at that point in time in my life if I would have sat down and enjoyed reading as much, but the audible story of it changed a little something inside of me, the way I was entertained in a way that I'd never been entertained before. And so I decided I'm gonna listen to all these books. So I listened to, I started with Will Wheaton's entire collection. The Collapsing Empire series, the Last Agent of the Stars, the Agent of the Stars. I can't even remember his books. Of course, Ready Player One, Head On, Locked In, All these books, just, I can't recommend them more from a storytelling perspective. I may be a little biased towards Mr. Wheaton because he got me into audiobooks, but I really think he does a fantastic job. So after I dove into that science fiction realm and world long enough, I decided to check some other things out. The Art of War, or turns out it's called The War of Art. I listened to them both because I didn't know. I was recommended one of the books and decided they're both good. Long story short, these 2-hour drives to and from work became my favorite part of the day. And I didn't hate my job. My coworkers were great, and we'd do the thing for 8-10 hours and go to happy hour sometime and all that, but I still, the best part of the day was the audiobook on the way home. And so one day, my parents decided to come. One day, let's start this right. So one day, my parentals decided they want to come visit me. I just bought a house in Texas. They fly down from Montana, and my dad's like, hey, so I got this friend I hadn't seen since my wedding. He's in San Antonio. I'm like, it's an hour and a half away. I'm like, you haven't seen him in like 50 years or whatever? He's like, yeah, it's been a while. So we go and we have lunch with him. Turns out their child is around the same age I am, surprise, and he was narrating audiobooks, and I asked that very generic first question, like, what? I've never heard of that. Like, you can narrate audiobooks? She's like, yeah, check it out. She gave me his number, told him I was going to get in contact with him. Because I was in audiobooks, but I never thought about making an audiobook. And I'll say I had a musical background, but I mean, I owned some things and I made sounds with them. It wasn't anything special, but I had a few pieces of equipment lying around. I was like, I might be able to make this work. Needed a microphone. Popped on Craigslist. It's Austin, Texas. Somebody had a microphone to me within the hour, I suppose. And it was the same one as this, but not this one because the original one only lasted about 5 years. So you gotta have your backups. Speaking of, I should probably buy another backup of the MXL 990. MXL 990 condenser microphone. So basically, talking to that dude and listening to these audiobooks, I didn't know was going to make me quit my job in the next 3 years. I thought I was going to be in this healthcare position for the rest of my life. I mean, it's what I went to school for and spent all my time learning just to ride to work, listen to this thing, happenstance run into the mother of a narrator, and then decide that, shit, I need to make some audiobooks. But it turns out that listening to the worlds and characters that, in my case, Wil Wheaton was narrating, I had no idea that Wil Wheaton was going to tell a story good enough for me to want to quit the job I've been working my whole life to get. But it happened, and holy shit, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. Granted, and I mean, you're going to hear me say this probably a bajillion times, but when you get into this, don't think you're just going to make a bunch of money at first. I mean, I didn't. I knew it was going to be a long road, as everything worthwhile is, but it's going to be a very rough start. Even if you know somebody, even if you go to a place, even if you have acting background and all this stuff, don't expect to get into it and in the first year, have all this extra cheddar. You're going to have to put in some time. More time than you're probably willing to put into it would be my guess, because it took me a while to even, I was pretty strict in the way I went about school and learning and my goals and careers and achievements and all that. I thought I was prepared for the amount of work that it was going to take to be able to learn how to record audio and learn how to tell a good story, but I had no idea. Turns out you're kind of in school every day. I mean, this is a side note, but this is something about the creative process. Maybe specific to me, maybe not. But I'm kind of hesitant to expose myself to new series. I mean, we live in this world of technology right now. And you can get books, you can get TV shows, TV series, you can get entertainment basically for days. And I found pretty quickly, a few years into it, that what I was watching was coming out of my character acting. So I found out pretty quickly that whatever I was watching was trying to sneak its way out of what I was trying to create in the studio. Granted, it wasn't like you see it and parrot it. I don't have those kind of skill sets. But I did notice that if I was watching a sci-fi series and the characters were a little more dramatic, that my readings were turning out to be a little more dramatic. So I'm like, well, maybe I can learn how to use this to help hone my craft here. And so I started just being very selective about what I exposed my brain to. And then I dive real deep into it because I'd get in, you get into the character actors, who's voicing it, how, and you're listening to details you maybe weren't listening to before, like their cadence, pacing, intonation, whether or not you think that they, like, even if it's a TV show, whether they read that emotion the writers were trying to write correctly, it changes everything you look at. But you get to directly apply what you're critiquing to your studio reads the next day. And that's where I think it gets super fun. But also, like, they want me to watch, I'm on another podcast. It's the American Barbarians. Check it out if you want. He wants me to watch Braveheart. It's his all-time favorite movie. And I didn't watch Braveheart at the time. And I've got no inner desire burning in my soul to watch Braveheart. Do I doubt it's a great movie? No. But I don't necessarily want to bring those type of characters into what I'm currently narrating. And also, it's Braveheart. It's Braveheart. I'm not gonna watch it. He's gonna try to get me to watch it. I ain't gonna watch it. Now, I got thinking about this, and on the other side of things, since I'm being so specific about the content that I expose my brain to, I could go the other way and see what happens and just expose myself to anything and all kinds of music and every kind of TV show. And I try that for a while, and then I feel like my narrations turn into chaos. Not that, like, I can't lock down a character, I have an idea, but I don't have this same connection with something to channel to turn into what I'm trying to create. Does that make any sense? I don't know. It's just what goes on in my brain. All that being said, there were a few reasons, I suppose, that kind of all got together that got me interested in narrating audiobooks. And if you're listening to this and you've made it this far, and you're thinking you want to narrate audiobooks, fucking do it. Like, don't let anybody ever tell you not to. I'm no guy to sit here and motivate you, but go after your dreams. Don't waste your whole life doing a job that you may or may not even like. Hell, you may not even like this job, but if you want to give it a try, just give it a try. You might find that it's something that changes your life in a way that you didn't expect it to. Either way, it's probably going to cause some sort of change in your life. I'm still trying to figure out the actual legs of this podcast, obviously. But in the next few episodes, I think I'm going to speak more on the technical side of audiobook production. Like I said earlier, you get pops and crackles in your audio. Why? Could be a bajillion different things. So we might touch on some software, what I've used, what I think is easy, what you can get if you want to build a super studio, and if you want to just spend like $10 and still get started, I'll talk about some of that stuff, and some possibly recording techniques, just shit like that. If you are in the book world, on the author side, narrator side, whatever side, hop down into the comments. If you're new to this or have been doing it 1,000 years, leave a question or maybe pass down some wisdom. And let's start to build a little community here that we can, get behind somewhat. Well, turns out episode 4 wasn't really about too much, but I hope you found it mildly entertaining. If you want to check out any of my audiobooks, you can just either put my name in Audible or go to skylarmorgan.com. I got another podcast, The American Barbarians. It's a pretty good podcast, too. Go check it out. Give it a click. Give it a listen. Let me know what you think. The outro music. Gotcha. Also, if you go to my website, skylarmorgan.com, and join my newsletter, I will let you know when all my audiobooks come out. I'm going to be having like a flood of them released. The way my narration schedule's been lately, it was weird. But usually I put out like 1 to 2 a month. But the project length and what I was juggling, they're all going to kind of like waterfall out at the same time. So go to my website. I'll sign up for my newsletter, and I'll let you know, and you'll get a chance to get those things hot off the press, hot off the microphone, for free. Until you can't, they only give you a few promos. So yeah, check it out. Well, that'll do it for episode 4. Thanks for listening to episode 4 of the podcast. The dogs are barking at a sound that I can't even recognize, so I don't blame them. Thanks for listening to episode 4 of the podcast.